The first sign that something was wrong was the sudden, silent death of the refrigerator's hum. One moment, the kitchen was filled with its familiar love from, and the next, there was nothing but the frantic beat of rain against the window panes. I was at the sink, washing the last of the dinner plates, and the world plunged into a deep, velvety blackness so complete it felt solid. Oh, great, I muttered, my voice unnaturally loud in the abrupt quiet. I fumbled for the dish towel, wiping my soapy hands as my eyes struggled to adjust. Beyond the kitchen window, the entire neighborhood had vanished. No streetlights, no glowing windows from the house across the street, just an abyss. Lavra? A young man's voice called from the living room. The power's out. I noticed, Mark, I called back, trying to keep my tone light. Are you okay in there? Yeah, just can't see my game anymore, he replied. Mark, my 17-year-old stepson, had been engrossed in a basketball video game when the storm hit. I heard the creak of the sofa as he stood up. A flicker of lightning illuminated the kitchen for a split second, freezing the world in a stark blue-white snapshot. In that instant, I saw the table, the chairs, the glint of the faucet. Then darkness swallowed everything again, deeper and more profound than before. The subsequent crack of thunder was immediate, a violent roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. I've never liked storms, and I've never liked the dark. The combination in this big, empty-feeling house with my husband, David, away on a business trip, sent a primal shiver of anxiety down my spine. I took a steadying breath. You're the adult here, I reminded myself. Act like it. I began moving cautiously toward the drawer where I knew we kept the candles and a flashlight. My shin connected sharply with the corner of the kitchen island, and I bit back a curse. Lavra? Mark's voice was closer now. I could hear his soft footfalls on the hardwood floor. I'm by the island, I said, trying to find the candles. Another lightning flash, and I saw him standing in the kitchen doorway, his tall, lanky frame silhouetted against the slightly less dark living room. He was holding his phone, its screen casting an eerie upward glow on his face. At 17, he was all sharp angles and newfound height, a carbon copy of his father at that age, with the same dark, intense eyes and a quiet demeanor that sometimes felt impenetrable. I've got my phone light, he said, crossing the kitchen toward me. The small circle of illumination danced over the cabinets and floor. The drawer is over here. He reached the drawer just as I did. Our hands brushed in the dark, and I pulled mine back a little too quickly. The space around us suddenly felt smaller, compressed by the storm and the night. He pulled out the heavy-duty flashlight we kept for emergencies and clicked it on. A strong beam cut through the darkness, and I felt a wave of relief. Thank you, Mark, I said, my voice softer than I intended. No problem. We stood there for a moment, the beam of the flashlight the only solid thing in the room. The rain continued its relentless assault. I busied myself with lighting a few of the thick pillar candles on the kitchen table. Their warm, dancing flames pushed back the oppressive blackness, creating a small island of light and casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. Dad said the weather was going to be bad, Mark commented, leaning against the island. He was watching me, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. He did. I just didn't think it would be this bad. I finished with the candles and turned to face him, crossing my arms over my chest. I guess we're in for the night. I hope the power comes back on soon. Silence fell between us, the kind that was becoming more and more common. It wasn't a hostile silence, but a heavy one, filled with all the things we didn't know how to say to each other. I'd been in his life since he was 10, married to David for 5 years. We had a good relationship, a polite one. We shared a home, meals, and a love for David, but there was a distance, a reserve that I didn't know how to bridge. He was a typical teenager, spending most of his time in his room or with friends. And I was the stepmom, careful not to overstep, always mindful that I wasn't his mother. It's kind of creepy, he said suddenly, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the room beyond our candlelit circle. The storm? I asked, yeah, but the dark too. In the house. He shifted his weight. It feels different when you can't see everything. I nodded, surprised. I know exactly what you mean. It's like the house becomes a different place. Another silence, but this one felt slightly less strained. The shared vulnerability of the situation was carving out a new space between us. Then, a tremendous blast of wind shook the house, followed by a sound like a gunshot from the backyard. We both jumped. What was that? Mark exclaimed, his voice tight. I think a tree branch came down, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. I took an involuntary step closer to him, toward the solid comfort of another human being in the frightening dark. He moved at the same time, and suddenly we were standing very close near the sink. The flashlight was on the counter, its beam pointing at the ceiling, and the candlelight from the table didn't quite reach us here. We were in a pocket of semi-darkness. It's okay, he said, and his voice was low, closer to my ear than I expected. I could feel the warmth radiating from him. I could smell the faint scent of his body spray and the clean cotton of his t-shirt. The storm raged outside, but in the small, dark corner of the kitchen, the world had shrunk to just the two of us and the sound of our breathing. And then he did something that changed the atmosphere completely. He reached out and put his hand on my upper arm. It wasn't a casual, comforting pat. It was a firm, steadying grip, his fingers curling around my bicep. The contact was electric and utterly inappropriate. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't the awkward hug of a boy on Mother's Day. This was something else entirely. Mark, I said, my voice a strained whisper. I tried to take a step back, but the edge of the counter was behind me. He didn't let go. Instead, he leaned in slightly. His face was so close to mine, I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes reflected in the distant candlelight. The air crackled with a tension I had never felt with him before, a dangerous, confusing energy that made my skin prickle. Lara, he murmured, and my name on his lips sounded foreign, wrong. Sometimes it's so quiet in this house when Dad's not here. My mind was racing, a frantic, panic chorus. This is wrong. This is so wrong. He's a child. Your stepchild. What is he doing? What are you doing? I felt frozen, trapped between the physical reality of his grip and the moral chasm that was opening up at my feet. I found my voice, injecting a firm maternal tone into it that I didn't fully feel. Mark, let go of me now. For a terrifying second, I thought he wouldn't. His gaze held mine, intense and unreadable. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the pressure on my arm vanished. He took a quick step back, running a hand through his hair. The spell was broken. I'm sorry, he stammered, his voice returning to that of a flustered teenager. He wouldn't look at me. I don't know what. I just got freaked out by the storm. The explanation was flimsy, and we both knew it. The touch, the proximity, the tone of his voice, it hadn't been about fear of the storm. It had been a line, blurred in the vulnerable darkness, and he had almost crossed it. My heart was still pounding, but now with a cold, clear dread. I wrapped my arms around myself, creating a physical barrier. It's fine, I said, the words clipped. Why don't you go wait in the living room? I'll bring the flashlight in a minute. He nodded, a jerky, embarrassed motion, and practically fled the kitchen. I stood alone in the semi-darkness, leaning against the cool granite of the countertop, my legs feeling weak. The storm outside was beginning to subside, the rain softening to a steady patter, but a different kind of tempest was now raging inside me. What had just happened? Had I misinterpreted everything? Was it just a scared kid seeking comfort in a moment of panic? But the look in his eyes, the firmness of his grip, that wasn't a child seeking his mother. The memory of the last few months surfaced in my mind. The lingering looks I'd sometimes catch from him, which I dismissed as teenage moodiness. The way he'd started offering to help me with things around the house more often when David was away. The questions he'd sometimes ask about my life before his dad, questions that felt a little too personal. I had brushed it all off, attributing it to him growing up and our relationship evolving. Now I saw it in a new, horrifying light. This was a crisis. Not a loud, dramatic one, but a quiet, insidious one that could tear our family apart. If I told David, it would create a rift between him and his son that might never heal. He would be furious, heartbroken, and confused. But if I didn't tell him, and this was more than a one-time moment of poor judgment, what then? I would be living with a secret, a lie of omission that would poison our home from the inside out. The flashlight beam wavered as my hand trembled. I had to be smart. I had to be careful. Most of all, I had to be the adult. I picked up the flashlight and one of the candles and walked into the living room. Mark was sitting on the edge of the sofa, staring at his dark TV screen. He didn't look up when I entered. I sat in the armchair across from him, placing the candle on the coffee table between us. The light flickered, illuminating the strained expression on his face. "Mark," I began, keeping my voice calm and even. "We need to talk.